Hello, dear ones. Welcome to the Dream Lab, a safe, inspiring place for you and God to dream without limits what you most desire to be, do, and have in your life right now. Every episode, I hold space for you to be irreplaceably you, to explore your unique design and discover your dreams as a reflection of God's heart for the world around you. I am your host, your guide, your encourager-in-chief, Christina B. Come on in to the Dream Lab. So I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast that my journey with the Dream Lab workshop started in 2016, or maybe even before that, if you count the time that I spent journaling on my own to figure out what I wanted to do. Then my mom died, of course, and that season was really, I think my mom's death really triggered a long, dark night of the soul, if you will. I realized about 2 years after my mom died that I felt like I was stuck in a little bit of grief. I definitely had realized that her death triggered some trauma, unresolved childhood trauma. But I didn't realize that for a lot of people, the death of a loved one, while it's a really sad event, for me, I feel like I got stuck in grief. There was something that I couldn't overcome on my own. So I found some counseling, and I did. My counselor was just wonderful. She was so compassionate and so Christ-like. She has a trauma-trained background. She's a trauma-informed background, and we did some EMDR. And I worked with her off and on as I needed for a couple of years. She was just lovely, and I got a lot out of it. Like the EMDR especially, while that was really painful at times, it produced a lot of relief, including forgiveness. I was able to come to this really deep and abiding place of forgiveness to both of my parents for all of the mistakes that they made, and came to this realization with such, oh my God, such compassion in my heart for each of them and all of their flaws and their own childhood traumas, that I realized both of my parents gave me everything they had. They gave me all of them. They gave me the very best they could, and they loved me fiercely, even though they weren't perfect. And that was the last session that I did with my counselor, this really deeply emotional and freeing, like cathartic session where I saw each of my parents in my mind's eye, both in heaven now, just looking down on me with such love. Like I just felt this deep and abiding love from each of them, even though they weren't perfect on this earth. I could cry even just thinking about it. I could go back to that moment when that really deep compassion for each of them came. It was such a relief. This huge weight lifted from my soul in that moment. I had a conversation with my friend Sarah not long after that, and I think that was around the 5-year mark. She shared an interesting story from a friend of hers who I think works in this field, like psychology and whatnot. And she said it takes 3 to 5 years when you lose an immediate family member, typically, for you to start returning to a sense of normalcy and feeling like yourself again. And I realized, it's about 5 years for me since my mom died. So at that moment, I wish I could say I had even greater clarity on what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be and have in that season of my life, but I didn't. I floundered around for a couple more years, and then it was sometime last year I resigned a really stressful job that was just a very unhealthy place for me. And while I didn't know immediately what I was going to do, I knew I had to, in faith, let go of the old and be in an uncomfortable in-between space for a little bit before I could fully embrace the new. I can't quite describe in words what that felt like. Scary, yes. Exhilarating, yes. But also freeing. Sometimes the old has to dissipate before the new crystallizes. And so I resigned the stressful job and I jumped back into substitute teaching at the end of the 2024 school year and thought, okay, I have enough savings saved up that I can get through 6 months or so. And at the very least, I could get through summer and start substitute teaching again in the fall. So that's what I did. I had the summer off, which was at times incredibly stressful because my soul has always anchored itself to a go-to W-2 wage earning job as a source of provision. And having free time when other people at work just felt really scary. It just felt like, oh my God, what is wrong with me? And yet, throughout the summer, I planted some flowers. I went on walks twice a day, most days, sometimes 3 times a day if it wasn't too hot in the middle of the day. I got to visit my dear, sweet friends in Cincinnati for almost a whole month in June. And I went back later that summer, which was really fun. And I just had to learn how to rest. I had to learn how to aggressively take thoughts captive that were causing me to stress out and be in fear. I can't say that I've arrived. I still have to do that. But having the summer off was both enjoyable and a real learning curve for me on what do I do when these thoughts and fears are engulfing my mind? How do I not let that hijack hours or days or weeks even? And I didn't do it perfectly for sure, but it was a learning experience nonetheless. So in the fall, I started substitute teaching again at the very end of August. And then I discovered the Kathy Heller podcast boot camp that she did, the little 5-day thing. And oh my goodness, this was the first time in a long time that I just found myself smiling and getting really excited about launching a podcast. I don't know why. I've never podcasted. And as I sit here, if you could see where I'm sitting right now, this is hilarious. I read an article somewhere that you don't really need a fancy microphone to start. You just start where you are. So I'm just using my Apple iPhone earbuds. And I read an article somewhere that if you don't have the fancy microphone to mute some of the background noise, you just go into a closet and surround yourself with the clothes and the pillows. So that's where I am. I'm sitting on the floor of my closet with all of my bed pillows and my couch pillows recording this episode of the Dream Lab podcast. So I didn't ultimately sign up for Kathy Heller's program. I just didn't. There's something in me that just felt like I couldn't pull the trigger, although I think her program is amazing. And she was, her intention was to walk through each and every one of those podcast seminar participants for a whole year. Like that was her intent, which I think is amazing. Eventually at some point I am going to hire a coach, but I just couldn't pull the trigger to spend that money at the time. Maybe perhaps it was still fear or what have you, but I sat on it. I've been sitting on this podcast, you guys, for 5 months. 5 months. And then I realized, I need to push past the boundary of this comfort zone of mine and just do it. So when I revisited the little podcast trailer script that I wrote, I realized that one of the things that we're going to talk about in the Dream Lab podcast is pushing past your comfort zones. And I realized I needed to take my own advice and my own coaching on that and just do it. So I picked a podcast hosting platform. I hired a graphic designer that I worked with when I worked at the marketing agency to create some podcast art for me. And it's beautiful. I love it. We're going to talk in a later episode about what that podcast art means, what the symbolism means. I uploaded the podcast art, created the RSS feed. I'm learning all of this stuff. I am not at all a tech person. I consider myself to be pretty tech challenged. And I'm not going to lie, I do find the tech part pretty daunting, but I picked the one that's easiest for beginners. And here we are. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This is the inaugural podcast of the Dream Lab. This is how it all started. I think where we're going in future episodes, we're going to talk a lot more about the things that you can do to tap into quiet and peaceful time with God to discern what your dreams are. We're going to talk about how important nurturing and bringing some calm and healing to your central nervous system is to being able to discern what your dreams are and pursue them with passion. We are going to talk about what happens when life hands you anguishing circumstances, like, the death of my mom. What do you do in life when something really hard is going on, when something hard happens, when something awful happens? We are going to talk about how you are uniquely and irreplaceably you, and what if the dreams and desires that God has placed in your heart for this season is really a reflection of his heart for you and for the world around you. What if? And we're going to talk about what holds you back, how to get unstuck. We are going to talk about and ponder deep questions like, if not you, then who? And if not now, then when? We're going to talk about, what if you didn't think it was impossible? What would you do? All sorts of wonderful and amazing things coming in the future for the Dream Lab podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you think this episode would be helpful for someone you know, please forward it along. If you liked this episode, please give it a thumbs up and leave a review. I look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, bye-bye.